Appreciation. So this is, Australia's the same, but, markets like New York, Los Angeles, right? Through the roof growth, you see in 2-3 years things double. I'm going to show you what happens to those when the things get bad, right? Big gains, also big losses. Typically, rent to price ratio, that's basically what you pay for the property versus how much rent you get. The higher the price, typically the lower the rent as a proportion. So it might pay you back 1%, 2%, 3%. Sometimes it's negative. Sometimes you have to pay. So in Australia, I keep referencing Australia, but just so you understand, like we lose money on our properties. So we pay, the rent that comes in doesn't cover the mortgage and the taxes and the insurance and so on. So we lose money every month. In the hopes of the bigger idiot theory, in 10 years' time, someone will pay us back more. And like I said, it's worked for a period of time. Except in the last 2 years, things have started to change. Same as what was happening here. In 2006, 7, 8, everyone was buying everything they get their hands on, right? If you could fog up a mirror, you could get a loan, right? But what happened? What happened afterwards? Right? It wasn't intrinsic value, right? And I'll show you what happens, the difference between appreciation versus cash flow. Cash flow markets, these are kind of Midwest markets. They can be in other places, but Midwest markets, so Ohio, Alabama, Indiana, there's others, Kansas. Low volatility, they don't go up and down much, right? Higher rent to price ratios. So have you guys heard of the 1% rule? Yeah? Anyone doesn't know what the 1% rule is? Okay, so 1% rule is basically just that the amount of rent that you get per month, you want to hit 1% of the property value, okay? So if it's $100,000, just as an example, you want to get $1,000 a month in rent, okay? It's actually not that, that's not true when you hear people say that, because it's actually more like 850 or something because you have 12 months in a year. So if you want to hit 1%, 12 months worth of 850 ends up being like 1%. But $1,000, right, is what you're trying to hit. And the reason for that is that that's how you can get some good cash flow. And these are those sorts of markets, and they vary, right? There are markets where you can get 2%. There are markets where you can get 0.5%, right? We'll talk about some of those today. Typically, red states politically. This is interesting. Why do you think that these are the markets? So these ones, right? Typically blue states politically, right? New York, Los Angeles, and so on. Red states typically are these cash flow markets. Do you know why? All right, I'm just going to tell you. Yeah, here's the thing, right? I don't care what your political affiliation is or whatever. It's not about that, right? I'm just talking financially, right? Democrats do what? Typically, they tax, they impose a lot of regulations, a lot of restrictions. They make it tough to do business, okay? Republicans typically don't, or not as much, right? And so, what keeps prices down? Well, when you make things expensive, you make it expensive to build. If all the regulations are expensive, then what investors do is they say, well, then I need a higher return for all of that annoyance that you cause me. And that's what causes the prices to go up. Right? If you can build any like right now, if you could buy a plot of land and just build whatever you wanted, it'll bring prices down, because why would I buy your house when I can build my own for either less or the same price and have it the way I want? But if I say to someone, you know what, you can't build anywhere here, then all I have to do is buy the existing stock. And if there's more people that want to buy, right, then what there's stock available, the price goes up. Does that make sense? So generally speaking, blue states will be more expensive. Now, that can be good for you. It can be. But you've got to know what you're doing, because when things go bad, they go down. And so you've got to figure out where you are on that spectrum about McDonald's and fine dining. You can go make $1 million on a year in an apartment in New York, but you can lose $1 million. It's up to you, right? I'm not that guy. So if you want that, talk to somebody else. But for me, I'm more conservative, and I'll explain to you why. Cash flow versus appreciation. Cash flow is really just money in your pocket, okay? Stream of income, it's repetitive. You want to be able to rely on it, okay? Appreciation, increase in value. I will tell you, honestly, that if I had to balance how much money I've made with cash flow versus appreciation, I've made a lot more money on appreciation than cash flow. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm not investing for appreciation anymore. For two reasons. Number one, as I get older, not older, but older, I have to consider, because where you're on your spectrum, right, the younger you are, the more risks you can take. As you get older, you don't have as much time, so you're going to be more conservative. That's the first thing. The second thing is you have to understand the world around you is changing, right? Kodak was amazing when 35mm film was around, right? Polaroid was killing it. Where are they now? Right? It's not because they didn't make photos. Who takes more photos now than they did when they had a Kodak camera? Right? So only like a third of you. Like, what's wrong with you people? Right? So it's not a lack of people taking photos or wanting to look at photos. It's that it's shifted how they take photos, right? Who loves going into their local Blockbuster store? Right? It's awesome, right? No, car. You want to sit at home in your pajamas and just click Netflix on, right? It's cheaper, you can get whatever you want, any time of the day or night, you can binge watch, right? It's just great. People aren't watching less movies, they just don't want to do it that way. Okay, it's the same with real estate. Real estate is changing, right? Just think about it. Young people are doing what? They're getting married later, right? People are getting divorced more, right? People are more after experiences than building a life. People are having less kids. So the housing stock of what is available and what people go for and what was great 20, 30 years ago is not relevant today many times. It's going to be even less relevant over time. Because what people are doing is, if I'm a single person, I don't need a 4-bedroom house. Right? So I'm going to pay less for it. It's just not worth it for me. Right? If I'm going to have a family, when I had 6 or 7 kids back in 1910, I don't need that now. I'm going to have 2 kids, 1 kid. So these are going to change. So if you're not prepared for that, you're going to be investing in things that don't have value long term. Make sense? So you have to be thinking about these things, and most people won't talk about this stuff, either because they don't understand it or they don't want to tell you because it's too in-depth and they don't want to lose you before you can buy their book. Right? But this is the stuff you have to think about, right? What's the future? What's it going to hold? What's going to happen to real estate prices when we have self-driving cars? When you sit in your car and basically just have a coffee and read the newspaper, do you care that you live an additional 10 minutes out, 15 minutes out, 20 minutes out? Not really, right? It's not going to matter. So there's some systemic shifts that are happening in our economy and our society that most people are not prepared for, haven't even thought about, right? What's going to happen to all the garage space, right? Just the huge garage space that you see in all these big cities, that all they do is just have cars in them, when you can basically hop out of your car and then it goes off somewhere 50 miles away and recharges while you're in the office, right? And when you call it, it comes back to you. Right? It's available right now. It's more regulation rather than technology that's stopping it. What's going to happen to all those people that own parking garages? Right? Are those going to be converted into something else? Right? This is what I'm saying. There's systemic shifts that are happening that people are not thinking about. So what's best between appreciation and cash flow? Both, right? You always want both. I like what I can control. I like what the government can't mess with. Okay? I can't control what the government does. The problem with appreciation is you can't sell off a bedroom. Right? If you need money quickly, right, it's tough. Cash flow puts money in your pocket every month. If I had to choose, and I do have to choose, I choose cash flow, typically. Even though I've made more money with appreciation. Because you can't eat your appreciation, right? And it depends where you are in life. If you're starting out, you can take some of those bigger bets. And even if you're wrong, you can recover in 10, 15, 20 years. But if you're like in your 50s and 60s and 70s, you're going to be more conservative. Because if you take a big loss, good luck making it back, So you have to think about those things. So that's the other thing I hate about some of these seminars and gurus. Oh, just do this. No, man, you think about it. Like, where are you at in life? You might need to be very conservative for the next period of time. Think about this. In 2008, some of the hardest hit people were retirees or people that were just getting ready to retire. You know why? Because they got into all these sexy investments and you're going to make all this money or whatever, and they might have been in their 50s, 60s, 70s, right? So they were sitting there building this huge portfolio. Then the crash comes, they lose 50% of their portfolio, 60%. Guess what? Back to work for another 10 years now. If they'd have been conservative, they wouldn't have been in that situation. Make sense? So you just got to think about those things. It's not always just what's presented to you. Think about where you are in life. That's something I do with all my clients. When I spend hours with them just understanding, like, where are you at in life? What's important to you? It's tedious, it's long, but man, it's the right thing for them because you chart a course that's going to benefit them for where they're at as opposed to just take 2 of these and see me in the morning, and hopefully it works,